My name is Kasim Rafiq and I am a wildlife researcher, a postdoc at the University of Washington in the Abrams Lab. So I study the behaviour of African carnivores, particularly wild dogs and lions, and I'm looking at how climate change is impacting how they use space and how they behave in the wild. So I'm using these cool little audio recorders that we're attaching onto these wildlife tracking collars to look at where these animals are going, what they're doing in those areas, and who they're meeting. These are the wildlife tracking collars we use for African wild dogs, and this is the one we use for lions. These animals like these really thick, difficult to drive through terrains. It's called Mapani scrub, and when you're trying to drive through it, it's a bit like trying to drive through a maze where there are trees every 30 centimeters apart in a car. So our days typically start at 4 a.m. We find the packs and then we just try and find our way through this maze to get to them. So these collars collect GPS data, but they also have something in them called a VHF transmitter. That stands for very high frequency. And essentially what this means is that there's a transmitter in here that sends out a pulse at a very specific frequency, and we have specialist equipment and an antenna that lets us hear that pulse. So if we are within, say, 2 kilometers of the animals and we point that antenna at them, we'll hear a beep, and then we can drive towards that. So it's sort of like a game of Marco Polo, where we can try and find where the animals are by listening to the sound of that beep, the direction of it, how strong it is, and then navigating towards it. So this is an audio recorder. It's smaller than a matchbox and it's been designed specifically for wildlife. So we can attach this to the side of our wildlife GPS collars, and this allows us to see where the animals are going, who they're meeting, and what environments they're in. So we can use the sounds from this to see things like where they're hunting, how often they're interacting with other animals like other wild dogs or lions. And when you combine that with the GPS data, you can see not only where these animals are going, but exactly what they're doing in those areas. So the data that we collect over the next 18 months will allow us to look at the last 10 years of data and look at how often these animals are making kills under different conditions. So over that period, there have been heat waves and there have been droughts. So with this translation, we can look back at that data and see how things like their ability to catch food is being impacted by climate change.